Hi, Jen. Welcome to the High Vibration Living Podcast.
Hi, thanks for having me. I'm so excited.
Me too. You and I have had the chance to chat previously, and one thing that we both loved discussing together was the concept of willpower. And when we go to change bad habits or upgrade our habits to more health supportive habits, you kind of can't turn things off and on. You often need to find a replacement, steps in between to get to the destination that you're trying to, aim for. So let's dive into that a little bit more. Willpower versus just cold turkey changing habits.
Yeah. So, well, first of all, I think, many of us, I've heard it a million times. People are like, oh, well, I just don't have willpower. Right.
Yeah.
I said it to myself years ago, right? It was like, why do I suck? Why can't I just not eat the croissant that's free in the kitchen at work? You know what I mean? The truth is, it's not really that we don't have willpower. It's that we're using it in other ways. So I think, we all fundamentally, we misunderstand what willpower actually is. So willpower is a finite resource that technically is replenished every night with sleep. So there you go. If we aren't sleeping well, we're going to have less willpower, right? Yeah. But I actually like to think of it more as a refillable cup. So we have to then understand what are the things every day that are drinking from our willpower cup, and then what are the things that can put some willpower back in it, right? So interestingly, anytime we have to make a decision, it drinks from our willpower cup. Anytime we have to contemplate something or use sort of like the prefrontal cortex, right? Like our higher order thinking drinks a lot from our willpower cup. Multitasking guzzles the willpower. So it is no coincidence that breakfast is an easier meal to have, quote unquote, on plan than dinner or after dinner or, even that ride home from work, right? It's not that you suck. It's not that you don't have willpower. It's that we used it all up all day.
Yes.
Making decisions at work and for our families and doing things that, quote unquote, matter, right? And then we expect to have something left without replenishing it. So thinking about the things then that replenish it. And by the way, I know we have a lot that we want to cover. So I'm kind of glossing over this, but willpower itself could be honestly an entire podcast unto itself. So, but so then the things that replenish it, interestingly enough, eating nutrition. So blood sugar. When our blood sugar is low, it drinks a lot from that willpower. We have very little willpower when our blood sugar is low, which in all irony, because especially in a lot of camps on, weight management, they say eat less, move more, right? And then a lot of times that eat less, we have low blood sugar, then somebody brings out chips or cookies, and of course that's like a magnet, right? So making sure that we eat nutrition so that we have balanced blood sugar dramatically improves our willpower. Exercise and activity improves our willpower. Accountability improves willpower. So that doesn't even have to be a coach. That could be a friend. Mm-hmm. That could be, when people make those declarations on social media of I'm doing this, right? That can improve somebody's willpower. One of my favorite ones that people sort of overlook is gratitude and generosity. Hmm. So
how do you apply that for willpower?
Yeah. So it's really about understanding when willpower is low, the body and brain's default is to maintain status quo and protect. What that means is that when we're in that self-protection mode, all we can think about is ourselves, right? Gratitude and generosity force us to think outside of ourselves. So let's say you hold the door for somebody behind you, or you buy coffee for the person behind you in line. Thinking outside of yourself signals to the body that it is safe. Because if we weren't safe, we wouldn't be able to think about somebody else. And then that can translate into improving our willpower, which is really interesting because a lot of times we hear about gratitude and, having all these other practices. But what if stopping and doing some of those things midday could improve how we feel about ourselves and our energy and all of these things and the ability to do the things that we want to do in a day? And there's a lot. I mean, we could keep going, but I think, point being, plan some of these things into your day. Choose one, see how it works, right? I'm a big fan of a Post-it or, a little piece of paper somewhere where you're going to run into it, and put a handful or more of these things on that little piece of paper, so that when you have those moments, you can look at the list of things and pick one. And if it works for you, great. If not, we can look at the list again, pick another one, and move on. Because the challenge is, I think we expect ourselves to think of these things in the moment. And even thinking of those things requires some level of this finite resource that we're currently lacking. So make it easy.
So you brought up a really good point, is people have a harder time staying on their health kick in the evening because they're tired, they're coming back from work, their willpower is low, they've used up that source in their body to continue to make good decisions. So how can someone prepare themselves for when they get home at the end of the day so they're still choosing a meal that makes them feel good and nourishes them and fills them up when they're exhausted? And that if they need something a little extra, a sweet treat, how do you make sure that you have the right options in the fridge?
Yeah. So first of all, sweet treats are amazing. They're not the enemy. Enjoy them, add them, plan on them, do the things, right? I think one of the biggest things, and what we see in the research on willpower, is that those who use willpower most effectively use willpower to create habits. They use their willpower to get as much as possible on autopilot. So then they have the willpower left for those moments when they need it, right? For the things that are not on autopilot. So if your drive home from work requires you to pass by that bakery, and you know that one, right? If your drive home from work requires you to pass that bakery, and then every day you have this debate in your head of, am I stopping? Am I not stopping? What if we just drove home a different way, right? So how can we minimize the chatter that's going to, distract us and continue to deplete that willpower? Another piece is to pre-plan. And I say this with a grain of salt because I am also that person who, if I meal prep, it'll be the things that I don't feel like eating, and then it'll all go bad. So I get it, right? But to the extent that we can, plan what that dinner is, make that the easiest option, and then leave it open. Let me have that first and then see how I feel. Right? And understanding, okay, wait, that raw vegan cookie is calling my name because I'm actually hungry, because I need protein, because my body needs nutrients. So let me eat those things first and then see how I feel about the cookie. And if I still want the cookie, great, I'll enjoy it. But let me start with the other things, because that craving I can decipher as I need these nutrients. You
brought up a really good point, and this is why I think meal prepping is so important, is because when you do walk into your house and you're starving, I like there to be something that I can take 3 bites of that can hold me over till I take a moment to put my stuff down when I walk in the door, put away what needs to be put away, take a minute to decide what I really want to have for dinner. But you need the few bites. And so having some protein that's already prepared in the fridge is going to help you a little bit more than just grabbing a carrot or something else that's in there.
Absolutely. And by the way, that also translates to the rest of the day, right? So fueling well throughout the day, making sure, especially if there's going to be a long span of time between lunch and dinner, then we plan on that snack. A lot of times that ravenous, I'm going to eat everything, including the table, right, is a function of low blood sugar. and typically needing protein. So if we plan a snack that gives us some protein, fiber, quality fat, then it's going to help us through that. And all of a sudden, dinner is not climbing Mount Everest naked and barefoot.
What do you like to keep in your bag or have handy at your desk as your afternoon snacks?
Yeah, I'm a big fan. I have an obsession with walnuts.
It's a good choice.
I just find them infinitely more satisfying than almonds. I don't
Me too.
know. It must be like a mineral thing that like I need what's in the walnuts. I don't know. But I find, an apple with walnuts or berries with walnuts, it's a little bit of the sweet and the savory. It gives me, the fiber from the fruit, a little bit of protein, quality fat from the nuts, and I'm like a different human. There's also, there's a million things. Speaking of like the things that you can grab a couple when you first walk in the door, I don't have them now, but I often have these little like protein balls that are super easy to make. Like you can pre-make them, stick them in the freezer, and they're perfect. It's like grab one or two. I also use the ones with nut butter, and then of course a little bit of chocolate chip, because is there anything better than peanut butter and chocolate? I don't know. But I can have a couple of those, or even those for dessert. And they also have protein and chia seeds and some other stuff in there that helps round out the nutrition so that I'm not, in this roller coaster of blood sugar and then, trying to white knuckle it and use the willpower to make healthful choices.
Yeah, hopefully people are starting to learn that white knuckling isn't the answer. It's not the answer with food, and it's really not the answer with any layer in life that they're approaching to make a change in. And so that leads us to substituting habits. So sometimes when we want to change a behavior, maybe we want to step away from eating dessert every night after dinner, or we want to upgrade our afternoon snack, or just small little behavior changes so we can become more healthy and feel better in our body. I think many people try to white knuckle it or just stop the habit.
Yeah.
What do you think of finding swaps instead that slowly get us towards our ideal destination?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we have this expectation of ourselves that we're going to flip a switch and that thing is going to disappear. And then we're sitting in that moment and we're like miserable. You know what I mean? This is giving me an indication of some weird internet stuff, but my internet seems fine.
I think we can just keep chatting, so don't even worry about it.
Okay, great. So we have this expectation that we're going to flip a switch, and then we get frustrated with ourselves when that's not how it happens. So there's a few pieces about behavior change that I think are really important for everybody to understand. And the first piece is, as you were saying, like it's a process, right? That replacing is easier than removing. But then even beyond that, we still think it's linear. And the reality is nothing in life is linear, right? And certainly not behavior change. So I want to use your example of like late night eating, right? So let's say right now you eat, like you have dinner, maybe you even have dessert, maybe you don't, whatever. And then it's that me time. We're relaxing, we're hanging out, we're watching TV, and it's like, I need something, right? And we start to munch. And then it becomes this thing where like we're doing it all the time. And now all of a sudden, like I'm a nighttime eater all the time. The first thing is maybe we just swap it out, right? Because I love your idea of swaps, but I want to get a little granular with it. Because we can also progress in the swaps. So the first swap might be, let's just eat berries and chocolate chips, right? Or berries and the walnuts when we eat at night, right? A lot of people's instinct is to go from eating marshmallows, right? Or whatever their thing is, to then having nothing. And that's really hard. So the first thing is we're just going to swap it out for something that has a little bit more nutrition.
Because then you're going to get full, and then you're going to see that you're really not hungry. You're just craving something else or some sort of
Maybe.
relief.
Yeah, in time, we can make that connection. I think for a while, and you might stick with just that healthier snack at night for a while. And then you might realize, I don't really feel like eating the berries and the whatever, but I still want something, right? And then maybe we switch to tea. Maybe we're then having tea. And then we're going, okay, here's the thing. What I'm actually looking for right now is a way to just sort of decompress.
Yes.
Maybe like mindless, de-stress, do something else. Okay, well, what else could I do that does that, right? Maybe we want to read a book. I'm also not even going to say, switch from the tea to the book. I'm going to say, add the book to the tea, right? Now let's sort of put these things together. And then maybe in time you go, you know what? I don't even need the tea. I just want the book, right?
And I would think you would want potentially movement. You want to go for a walk. You want to clear your mind. You want to see a different space. You want fresh air.
It could be. Yeah, like I'm a big proponent of a 10-minute walk after you eat.
Me too.
A lot of times, especially for people who are those nighttime eaters, that can happen at 11 o'clock, and they're not necessarily going to go out for a walk at 11 o'clock.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So we can have these swaps, right? And even that, for some people, might take months, and that's fine, right? We have our whole lives. It's fine. And by taking the time to make those swaps and to tweak it, right? Small steps, over time, we get to where we want to be, and we can stay there versus the pendulum swing that's from all or nothing to all or nothing over and over and over. Right? And then this piece that I mentioned about it not being linear. So I teach what's called the bullseye of change. So think about like a 3-ring bullseye. Like if you're a note taker, draw 3 concentric circles. So the outer ring are our behaviors. Behaviors that repeat become habits. So the next ring in our bullseye are our habits. And then that center circle, the bullseye, is our identity. So now we can think about this from the outside in and from the inside out. So the outside in would be using the same example, right, of the late night eating. The outside in might be, I'm going to make sure I have berries at home, right? The behavior might be, I'm going to put a Post-it on the fridge that says berries, right? I'm going to make sure that I have mini chocolate chips or that I have walnuts, right? We have these little behaviors. When we repeat that, it becomes these habits. And over time, we end up developing an identity of like, I don't really eat at night, right? Because we started with the berries and then it was the tea and we progressed. The other way would be like from the inside out. So the inside out might be, okay, the identity I'm looking to create is I don't eat after dinner, if that's important to you, right? I don't eat after dinner. Okay, so what are the habits of somebody who doesn't eat after dinner? Oh, well, they maybe walk. They have other activities. They occupy themselves, right? They do things after dinner. Okay, so then what are the behaviors that I need to develop that? Oh, well, maybe now I eat dinner with my shoes on so that I can go for that 10-minute walk. Maybe now I create a little list of things for my after dinner hours so that I can tackle some of those things that I feel like I never have time to do. So we can think about it, 2 different ways, but the reality is on any given day, in any given moment, all we have to think about are those little behaviors and everything else is inevitable in time. Now, I sort of think about this. Have the videos or the movies where you see like a jellyfish swimming and they're like an orb that's like in and out, right? That's how I think about this. Because we can sometimes go where we might have moments where we are in that identity and it is like, I got this. Like I can take anything you're throwing at me, does not matter. I'm not eating at night. And then there are other times where we're like, I just need to make sure that I have the berries in the house. Right? That's okay. It doesn't mean that we failed. It doesn't mean that anything's wrong with us. It's just reality of life. And so there's actually one more ring around the outer one. So if you're drawing your bullseye, add one more layer to the outside, and that is your environment. When things change in our environment, it has the possibility to ripple through everything. So we change jobs, we move, we have another kid, right? Whatever it is, things change in our environment. And now all of a sudden, this thing that was maybe at that identity requires us to go back out and start looking at those behaviors again. And I think if we can think about it in this way and understand that it's this very fluid process, then it gives us the grace to live our lives and be human and manage our own expectations of ourselves and never feel like we're failing, because you're not. Right? All we're ever doing is figuring it out on any given day, given what's happening.
Absolutely. And I would also add, as a health supportive chef, that when your plate is balanced, when you've created a balanced meal, then those additional cravings won't happen as frequently because your body will have the nourishment it needs. Now, it doesn't mean that there aren't days where we're more hungry than others. That absolutely happens. But the balanced plate and managing the willpower versus, actually choosing the ingredients that you're craving and are going to be good for you will make a huge difference.
Absolutely. And we can go into some of the details here, but truthfully, a lot of times when we're craving sugar, what we actually need is protein. If we're starting our day with too little protein and too many high glycemic carbohydrates, it's setting us up for a roller coaster of mood and blood sugar and frustration for the entire day, right? When we don't sleep well, our body doesn't properly respond to the hormones that tell us when we're satisfied. So of course we feel like we can't stop eating. It's biochemical that you can't stop eating.
Yes.
Right? For a variety of reasons, not just because we want the energy, but also because our body's not responding to leptin that's saying, yo, I'm full, right? Our body's like, I can't hear you, right? So it's so chemical. Everything about the body is so chemical that for me, when I learned a lot of this stuff, it changed everything, right? It changed every food decision and moment from being emotional of like, why do I suck? Why can't I just choose the carrot, right? To, oh, I get why the Twix looks good right now. What I really need is the carrot and the nuts. Let me have that first and then see how I feel. It becomes an intellectual decision rather than an emotional one. And that shift changes everything.
So it sounds like for people that are listening, good night's sleep, having your home prepared with foods that are really going to nourish you, giving yourself a minute to make the right decision for you at that point in time. And again, focusing on your plate and making sure you're having a balanced meal with protein. If you can kind of set reminders, put Post-it notes up, just try to hit those points every day, things will fall into balance.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think it's about managing our own expectations of ourselves and saying, let me do the little things that are going to make this easier, because nobody wins for making this the hardest.
Absolutely. And I really like your suggestion of changing your routine if the way you drive to work or something that's in your day is triggering that craving or that guilt. Just go a different direction. There's always another way.
Exactly. And sometimes it does require somebody else to hear that story and be like, take a different street, yo. Right? Like sometimes we just need somebody else. We can get so stuck in our own stuff. And that's totally natural too. So it makes the argument for, again, it may not be a coach. It might be a friend, right? Somebody who can sit there and think through this with you to say, I got to figure out how to not end up in this moment every day on my way home from work,
Yeah. You and I had also been talking about, when we touch on behavior change in the process, you mentioned the vagus nerve. What's the vagus nerve and how does it connect to all of this?
Okay. So the vagus nerve is cranial nerve 10, cranial nerve X. It is the literal connection between the gut and the brain. So think of the vagus nerve like a 5-lane highway. Okay, 3 of those lanes go gut to brain. 2 lanes go brain to gut. We will never outthink the chemistry of what we are putting in our body. Everybody, and I'm a big fan of understanding that when we are, in the process of transforming our health and our lives, that it is mental as much as it is physical. But I believe the physical has to be first.
Yes.
Because it makes the mental side a lot easier. We will not outthink that chemistry. It will always feel like climbing Mount Everest naked and barefoot if we are trying to think our way over toxins and chemicals and food-like substances. So this also tracks to the connection between our food and our mood, right? Our mood is a function of neurotransmitters. Neurotransmitters, right? The little things in the brain and throughout the body that help us feel good or help us manage our emotions, right? Or stay sort of even keeled or get excited, right? Or calm down. All of those neurotransmitters require amino acids. Amino acids are the building blocks of protein. Also requires B vitamins, right? Also requires omega-3s. If we aren't giving our body those nutrients, what we see, right? It tracks processed foods, not enough omega-3s, lots of sugar and high glycemic foods, too little sleep, right? All the things translates into a decrease in what's called BDNF, or brain-derived neurotrophic factor. Decreased levels of BDNF are connected to anxiety and depression, cognitive decline, metabolic disorder. Fundamentally, if we don't give our body the nutrients that it needs and send those nutrients up to the brain, everything else is going to feel really hard. So what if we start with making sure that we start the day with 30 to 40 grams of protein within an hour to 90 minutes of waking up? And then we see how the day unfolds. And what if we make sure that we're filling in the gaps where our nutrition falls short with some high quality supplementation, and we really create an increased commitment to the nutrition? Now, all of a sudden, to your point, those cravings are a lot less often than they used to be. And now I can actually identify what scenarios create those cravings. And I can actually think through a process for adjusting all of that and making all of this easier. So when I work with clients, we start with the nutrition pieces. We actually don't even talk about exercise and activity till about a month in. And then in the second half of our time together is when we get into the habits and the behaviors and travel and reading menus and all these other things that make things not quite so simple, and learning to believe in ourselves again, right? We want to make sure, like I said, in any health transformation, that we're focusing on both the mental and the physical. But if we try to start with one without giving the other to support it, it feels infinitely harder.
How do you approach clients who just don't believe that food can improve their health?
I don't think those people work with me.
But I feel like many of us have friends, right? We have friends,
Right.
We have friends' husbands or wives. There's always someone within our circle as people who work in the health and wellness space that don't believe that applies to them. That their life is working and they eat where they want to eat, they eat what they want to eat, they live the way they want to live, and they're, still alive. But that they are stacking a variety of health issues. How do we as friends and people who love and care about others, how do we gently help them understand that food is the foundation to their life?
Yeah. This is a great question. I've done a couple episodes. One's popping to mind about how to be a wellness ally. And that's a lot of this. I want to back up to recognize that we cannot control anybody else, nor can we take responsibility for anybody else. even our kids, right? There's a lot that we can do, right? We can make our best efforts. So one of the best things we can do is just live it ourselves. You living your example of fueling yourself well and having energy and feeling great and not relying on caffeine to function through the day. It's like you end up like this. There's an analogy in business about like the lighthouse. Like when you're clear on what you do and who you are, you're a lighthouse, like a lighthouse in the water, right? That attracts the boats to it versus, being like a buoy in the water that's sort of moving around and everybody's sort of chasing it, right? So if we can just be the lighthouse, when those people are ready, when those people recognize that something isn't serving them, then they will be ready to hear it. But no matter what you say, if they're not ready to hear it, it won't matter. And it's going to be frustrating for you, right? So even when I'm around people, right, like a lot of my friends, right, they're not my clients. They're not necessarily looking for me to say things. So like this actually happened recently. Somebody was talking about taking a pharmaceutical to prevent a certain kind of cancer. And I was like, yeah, and just left it at that. They didn't ask for my opinion. That was even more than I usually say, right? But if they're not asking, stop volunteering.
Yes.
And we can certainly open the door, right? So if they say something, if they start to complain about something, right? Like, oh, I'm just not sleeping, right? Then we say, I may have a couple of ideas if you want. Let me know. Don't volunteer any information till they ask for it, right?
Yeah.
Because otherwise they're just going to sort of be defensive. But if we just mention that we may have a couple of ideas and let them say, oh, yes, please, or no, thanks, I'm good, then we know. Because sometimes people are just venting. And that's also okay too, And maybe even say that, like, are you just venting or like, do you want to talk through some options or like brainstorm a solution? Do
you find that there's a particular theme of why clients are currently reaching out to you, what they're looking for or what they're challenged with?
Yeah, weight management is a big thing in my practice. So, weight management is typically what brings people in the door. The other big things are blood work. So my specialty is a lot around cholesterol numbers, blood sugar numbers, and that kind of stuff. So those are typically the things that bring people in the door. And then, of course, once we're in a conversation, then we're dealing with all of the things. And the same for those other people, right? Like until or unless they find the thing that makes them uncomfortable, right? Then they're going to live in their little world and do their things. And that's great. And when they're ready, we're here.
So when you have people in your life or clients that get the blood work and the cholesterol is high and they're being told to go on a statin and they are smart enough to know that maybe they should explore some other options before they start the pharmaceutical, what do you suggest to them for a few steps that they can take to start to change their blood work so they don't have to do the statin?
Yeah. So the first thing is, and I want to preface all this by saying, I am not here to diagnose, treat, cure, prevent any disease. This is not a substitute for medical treatment or medical advice. Always consult your healthcare practitioner. Always consult your pharmacist, right? Like, caveat on all the things.
Yes, absolutely.
And I like to work with my clients and their health professionals. And we have a conversation and I'll say, ask your doctor for 12 weeks, right? A lot of times the doctor is going to say, I'm going to test you again in a year. Okay, question. What if we test sooner? And will you give me some time to do this on my own before we go for the statin? Right? Can we start with 12 weeks? Right? I will say, and I've been in practice since 2007, I've never had someone's doctor say no. So 12 weeks. And then we have a conversation about where we're at. I will tell you, one of the number one things that we can do for cholesterol is actually managing sugar.
Well, interesting.
So inflammation, cholesterol, blood sugar, all intimately tied together and all very responsive to nutrition. And there are also sometimes botanicals and herbs and things that we can use to support all of this as well. So we're going to work together to figure out the menu plan that works for them. I will tell you the cheat sheet in this moment, right? For everybody, all the note takers, write this down. Protein and fiber at every meal makes removing fat no big deal. Protein and fiber at every meal makes removing fat no big deal. So protein is clean, lean protein. I don't care what you want that to be. Animal, plant, something we haven't even discovered yet, right? Clean, lean protein. Fiber is vegetables and sometimes fruit. And then meal, it's really any time we eat. The only difference between a meal and a snack is how much we have at a time, and then therefore how long it's going to last us. So we're going to learn to build meals and snacks, protein, fiber, and then the other thing we want every day is quality fat, right? And we'll add that in there a couple times a day. And we're going to start to make some progress. And lo and behold, right? And I did this with my dad, actually, because I've been doing this for so long and he's heard me, a million times when his doctor wanted to put him on a statin, he was like, he didn't say, give me the 3 months. You know what I mean? He was like, no, right? So he didn't do the statin. And he was always sort of watching and paying attention. And his doctor at every year would say, I want to put you on the statin, but I know you're going to say no, right? So one of the things that we did was we also asked for some additional tests. We wanted to look at some other things. So working with another naturopath that I collaborate with and learn from, we asked for some additional tests. And then he was committed, right? He was in it. And we spent some time like going through what is he eating and how do we tweak it and how do we add more, especially soluble fiber for lowering LDL cholesterol. So we looked at a lot of these things and we tweaked, and he did the blood work after 3 months and it was better. It was about halfway to where the doctor wanted it to be in 3 months. So we went for another 3 months and he tested again and it was about halfway again, closer to where we wanted it to be. He went for that year later, every number was within the healthful range. And the doctor was like, I don't think you need a statin. Right.
Amazing.
But it takes time and it takes commitment.
Exactly. Yes. And I love that it's not necessarily the time frame we set, but if we stay consistent, our body will ultimately find the right balance.
Exactly. And it's tweaks. We did certain things in the first 3 months, and then depending on how much change that created, that lets us know, do we need a greater level of commitment to make the next shift? And sometimes, I know you talk about this all the time, right? They're just trade-offs. So it's the same thing with all of this. If there are certain pieces that we're not willing to do, then we might need a greater commitment elsewhere, right? So he started working out more. He started working with a trainer and doing different things there, right? Well, if we're not doing that, then we might need a greater commitment elsewhere, right? If we're not willing to eat tons of vegetables and fruit, then we might need a greater commitment to some supplementation, right? And so it's really about what are you willing to do? How can we work within what you're willing to do? And recognize also that what you're willing to do will evolve also.
You sound like such a great coach, Jen. I mean,
Thank you.
So impressed. Where can people connect with you, reach out to you, find out more to see if you're the right person for them to work with?
Well, first of all, thank you so much. That's so kind. I'll make sure that you have a link to put in the episode notes for a complimentary discovery call. Everything I do with somebody, it starts with a complimentary call for us to get acquainted. Let's see if we vibe. And then from there, we'll often then go to an intake. And even that I do complimentary. And then we'll figure it out. What does this look like for you? Do you need a couple recommendations and you're going to go run on your own? Or does it look like that accountability and somebody to go through this process with you to help you tweak and figure it out and make sense of the things that are confusing? So with that, I put a package together for clients that is the coaching plus a personalized supplement regimen. And then we work together for 12 weeks. I look at it as 12 weeks to help you build the tool belt so that you can go live the rest of your life. Mm-hmm. If you need me to figure out what you're eating next week, I've done you a complete disservice. So, So we'll put the link in the episode notes. All social media, I am at Jenn Trepeck, JENNTREPECK. Website is asaladwithasideoffries.com. And then, of course, my podcast is Salad with a Side of Fries.
Absolutely. Well, it's been such a treat to chat with you. I love exploring these topics, and you do a great job of just breaking it down so people can have the visuals inside their head. And I really appreciate that.
Well, thank you. I appreciate you, and I'm excited for our continued conversations.
Absolutely.